Paul's been on there for a long time. So let's get Paul up in there. Mm-hmm. And he wants to talk about the historicity of Moses. I don't feel like there's a lot to talk about. I think it's pretty much cut and dry. But yeah, what do you want to talk about pertaining to that?
No, yeah, I agree. It's cut and dry. There was no historical Moses. But most specifically, I mean, when I came across Philo of Byblos' account of Sakaris the Wise, I'm butchering his name. Mm-hmm. There's a whole Phoenician, religious tale of a lawgiver and a savior leading them out of into their promised land in Byblos and Tyre from the Reed Sea being split. It lines up with the Baal cycle, and it lines up with this but rather sophisticated kind of telling of the cycle of Osiris's death, involving Queen Quiddetch and the people that were the descendants of Tatus ben Nezer, the Moses of the Phoenicians. Unlike the second with Moses.
Yeah, Paul, there's a lot of interesting stuff. I think you're kind of maybe preaching to the choir here on this one. There is a lot of interesting historical analysis as to whether Moses was a historical figure. I know that there's examples of the story of Moses being sort of copied, pasted, and then in a very undergraduate way, small edits being made to make it a distinct, no offense to undergraduates, but some of you are plagiarizing each other's papers. We know this. But yeah, I don't think you're going to get too much of a fight here. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I can say with certainty that Moses did not exist. I don't personally believe that Moses exists, but I wasn't there. I don't have a strong feeling about it.
All the mystical characteristics.
Yeah.
If you can find just one, does that make a Moses?
No.
I feel like if you're not dealing with the lawgiver of the mythology, then why even call it Moses?
Well, I think a lot of it, if I'm not mistaken, is from some oral tradition that stems right. You're already in a weird area of where these patriarchs are going to be having essentially what's attributed to them being substantiated by what people have passed down in that, right? And then you just, I don't feel like you have to go to where you're going. I mean, it's just as simple as like the claims that surround the being itself. Yeah. Just they don't fit, especially when it comes to just like anatomy or biology.
Well, I mean,
so it's like you don't have to even go that far. It's just reasonably.
Father Irenaeus. I mean, this was one of the things that Father Irenaeus was convinced Father Irenaeus that the devil must be a time traveler. That's a bit of a sarcastic way of saying it. Sure. You know what I mean? The evidence of the religion being this repeated, copied over thing was not hidden in the ancient world, and and Irenaeus thought it such a problem that he had to come up with this kind of backwards time, precognitive trickery rationale to lie it away.
So Paul, are you frustrated that people just accept the Moses story as historical? Are you bemused? Are you because we're not particularly moved by it, but
the research. Well, that the research that most, I feel like most of I've always been an atheist. My folks were Sikhs, and essentially Sikhs. I mean, we're pretty. The branch is pretty far astray from the religious trappings. Mm-hmm. They were both sort of de facto theists, but not out of a insistent belief that that's true, but more like a utility out of it. Although I argue that it was greatly detrimental. But I can't make a change about that.
Okay.
I feel like the vast majority of the Second Great Awakening or the First Great Awakening of Protestant Christianity is swallowing the world into its most basic, unsophisticated. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's about identifying the magical thinking and facing it head on. But I am very frustrated that living in surrounded by a culture that seems to celebrate lying and ignorance as it.
Well, Paul, I wouldn't go so far as to say lying, but I'm with you. I'm frustrated living in a world that just sort of glosses over whether or not you
how many
can.
Gospels were written?
Yeah, well,
How
I
many
mean, you can't
Gospels
take
were
the
written?
perspective that this is a lie, though. I agree
Yeah.
with Johnny there. That's you're baking in
No,
a
I
little bit
mean,
more
there
into
was
that.
so many written that obviously it was a practice to write your own Gospels in such huge numbers.
Well, so
And
my issue with that,
single
though, is
one of them.
But so I have an issue with that in the sense of like, so Paul, for example, if like my neighbor Betty or whatever, tells me about the gospel and it's in a just some disagreement with one of my parents' neighbors who actually wants to talk to me about the Bible all the time. So I go talk to her and I go talk to Betty, right? Like they're going to have their interpretations, and it's what everybody does. There's the gospel of Betty and the gospel.
No,
of
these aren't interpretations. This is invention.
That's just the way that this.
I mean, we're
is.
adapting angel cults, and then not like Nazareth didn't exist, but there were not serum. It was an angel cult,
Yeah, there's a lot of claims going on here, Paul, and I think that we're reaching toward the end of the show, and I just don't think we'll be able to get into all of that. I think that there is a substantial amount of research into the history and the literary analysis of the works of not only the Bible as it has been published and has been distributed throughout the world, but also of the Apocrypha. Looking at you, Kevin from New York. But to say that there's a whole slew of lies, I mean, I'm not convinced by it. I'm not really interested in having this conversation, but I do appreciate you calling in, Paul, and appreciate if you've got some interesting reading that we should do. I know that I'm always looking for more reading. Could you recommend a book for us to look at? Maybe the viewers could take a look at it, some writers or some text that we could check out. What do you have for us?
Well, you could look up Atheist Ebenezer on Wikipedia.
Atheist Ebenezer on Wikipedia?
Weird spelling. It's a T-A-A-T, I think U-S or A-A-S, but Tatus. Or Philo of Biblo, Phoenician Moses, or Origin of Writing according to the Greeks.
Great. We will check out that. Thank you so much, Paul, for giving us those suggestions. I really do read a lot of the stuff that people suggest, not everything. I wanted to say something. Speaking of unusual texts that have come up recently, last week, we had your friend and mine, Kevin from New York, called in, and he identified for us, thank you so much, Internet Sacred Text Archive at sacred-text.com. I spent a little bit more time on this website. I had made some suggestions that I cast aspersions upon Internet Sacred Text Archive. I cannot speak to whether or not this website is completely legitimate or not. However, I did look through it a little bit more, and there's some interesting stuff here. I would encourage folks that if they are comfortable reading through this, this website was put together by a particular individual who wanted to make sure that these holy texts, these seminal works of philosophy and mythology and theology of the human race were collected into a place and available for free, provided that there was no copyright, so that people could read them for themselves, all in English. He's pretty funny. He's got a little bit of a personality in here where he talks about it. He's not asking you to accept these things as true. And he's just trying to make this information available. And he's trying to promote religious tolerance. I think that's a good thing. Religious tolerance. Know what other people are saying. Look at the information. Look at what they have. He's not talking about the veracity of the claims made in the holy books. He's just talking about what holy books there are. And when asked if there was a quiz, he says there is no quiz, nor is there any cake, which means this particular person is Hep. His name is John B. Hare. And shout out to John B. Hare. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm certainly going to use this website when I hear about new, unusual holy books, unusual to me. But that's all I have to say about that.